Okay, so now that we got into the funded account, we're reviewing a 50K expert My Funded Futures account. Once you get into the funded account, this is where the real work begins. Okay, we got to get past that buffer zone. If you want to take a withdrawal during the buffer zone, be my guest. You got to understand that you only get a percentage of the profits if you're withdrawing during the buffer zone. You also have to understand that the minimum withdrawal is $1,000. So, in my opinion, I'd rather just continue to keep trading instead of taking a withdrawal during the buffer zone. Get past the buffer zone, then think about withdrawing. All right. Thank you for the patience. So, in my opinion, you should work past the buffer zone if you're capable of doing it. Yes, it will take more time. Yes, it'll take more patience. Yes, it'll take more trades. But in my opinion, this will give you better odds moving forward. If you were to withdraw before the buffer zone, then you give yourself less drawdown to work with moving forward. Okay. So in my opinion, working past the buffer zone is a good idea. Then once you get past the buffer zone, then start thinking about withdrawals. Okay. And another phenomenal thing about My Funded Futures is your first 10K of withdrawals goes directly to you. So let's say you're at, I'm using numbers just to prove the point. Let's say you're at $13,000 of profits, right? You're $11,000 over the buffer zone. If you wanted to withdraw $10,000 right then and right there, that first $10,000 goes to you. Now, just hear me clearly. It's the first $10,000 that you make at My Funded Futures. Okay, so if you've already done $30,000 of withdrawals, you'll be dealing with a profit split at that point. This is only for your first $10,000 of withdrawals. That first $10,000 of withdrawals goes 100% to you. After you've taken $10,000 of withdrawals, then there's a profit split. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because of the buffer zone. Okay, so like, in my opinion, why not create the buffer zone, even plus some, right? So the end of day trailing drawdown stops trailing when you go past $2,100 of profits, right? So then you get larger buffer. So let's say you made $4,000. Now your drawdown is worth $4,000 because your end of day trailing drawdown stopped trailing. This is where we start compounding, and this is why I wanted to get into this conversation, because this is what we're working towards. A lot of people like to say, oh, you only made $1,200 or you only made $500. That's a really bad perspective, in my opinion. Imagine if that $1,200 was across 3 different accounts. Is $3,600 acceptable? Like, what's the number that makes it good or bad? In my opinion, any withdrawals are amazing. So, but what I'm getting at is that you need to shift the perspective to a compounding perspective, right? Like, for example, if your risk management is to divide your drawdown by 10, the moment you have $10,000 of drawdown, you have larger risk, which means you have larger rewards. There's the whole compounding aspect. Right, so we need to figure out a way to get to that point in time. We need to get to that compounding stage. That's why I'm kind of having this conversation, is showing you a realistic path to that compounding stage. Keep the drawdown there, right? If you want to take your first withdrawal, get to 4K, get to 4K profits. Then withdraw $1,500, right? Then you still have your drawdown. You don't deal with any of that buffer zone. Take your payment the first time around, then think about starting to scale. The moment you can have larger positions, the moment you'll have larger returns. Now, I'm specifically pointing this out because the other option to this is to take a full withdrawal. Now, let's say you had $4,000 of available withdrawal and you took all $4,000. You're essentially forfeiting the account because you're not leaving any you're not leaving any drawdown left in the account for post withdrawal. Okay, so now do you see the difference? Do you see why I'm having this conversation? Just trying to go through some of the fundamentals of dealing with these accounts. You don't want to do all this work, take your withdrawal, and then have nothing to work with after the withdrawal. You want to keep trading so that you can get to that point in compounding. Okay, so right, so and perfect timing for that question, Bags, right? Perfect timing for that question. If I have 1.2K in my funded, but I haven't built the buffer, shall I withdraw? First of all, you need to know the account that you're dealing with, right? If you're in an expert account, then that's the exact conversation we're having right now. If you're at 1.2K of profits, I would keep working on that. Get it to like 4K of profits, then take a $1,500 withdrawal. That way, you've passed the buffer zone, so you get a good percentage split if that's your first $10,000 of profits, while also keeping a buffer for post withdrawal. That way you can keep trading. That's the exact conversation we're having now. But you have to understand which account you're in because it's different options for different accounts. The conversation we're having right now is about a 50K expert account.